Hi guys, this is Julian Carlson. In today's video I'm going to give you my rolling review of Back to the Future Part 1. Guys, I adore this movie. So, if you don't know what it is, it's a great, first, it's a trilogy. It's the Back to the Future trilogy. In this first one, we meet Marty. Now Marty McFly is a troublemaker, not by his own fault, but by his rebellious streak. But he's not a full rebel. He's just a normal rebel. He has a normal rebellious streak, not an extreme ECW rebellious streak. For all my WWE fans slash ECW family members slash ECW family members as well. But anyway, Marty has a normal rebellious streak, and he has a girlfriend named Jennifer, who he wants to take out to a romantic romantic weekend to a camping spot. But he doesn't but then he sees a wonderful truck, an awesome truck that basically gives him the idea of this romantic camping trip. But here's the kicker: Marty is not only a normal. He doesn't only have a normal rebellious streak to him. He also has a rebellious a very wonderful, funny and wacky friendship with Doc Brown, a wacky scientist who Marty uses Doc Brown's lab for stuff. But this time, in this case, Doc Brown has found a breakthrough in overall science. To be more specific, time travel. So so Doc Brown sets up a meeting, or sets up a night meetup with Marty at the Pine Brook Mall, where Marty has to wake up at 1 o'clock in the morning, to get his film camera and film the awesome new experiment of Doc Brown. But here's the kicker. Doc Brown's time travel experiment is not your typical time travel experiment. It needs more of a kick. To be more specific, a nuclear kick, a Kryptonian type kick. Yes, I'm talking about plutonium. This is not your typical time travel experiment, because in this case, Doc Brown's time travel experiment involved a DeLorean. Yes. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Doc made or created a time machine out of out of a DeLorean with a little bit more with a a a Shawn Michaels sweet sweet chin music type of a plutonium kick. Now now in the news, in the local Hill Valley news, because that's where Back to the Future takes place. Hill Valley, California. Now, according to the local news of Hill Valley, a plutonium two like three 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 tons of plutonium were stolen from a nuclear plant. And that's exactly what Doc Brown did. He stole the plutonium. But he also promised a group of of Libyan rebels that he would build them a plutonium bomb. But Doc Brown ripped them off. And to be more specific, the DeLorean, the time machine, the perfect first member to try out this time machine out of a DeLorean is Einstein, Doc Brown's dog named Einie, or Einstein, like Albert Einstein. And here's the kicker: the car has to go in a straight line and needs to reach a velocity of 88 miles per hour before it disintegrates into time and space. And that's exactly what Einie does. Now, here's another thing. Doc set up a neck watch, meaning a neck watch, synchronized. He has two pairs of synchronized watches, neck watch. But Einie's watch is set or synchronized 1 minute ahead into the future. So where does Einie travel? He travels 1 minute ahead into the future, and he comes back 1 minute back into the present. But Einie has no clue, has no recollection that he traveled 1 minute into the future. He's basically, his memory's wiped completely from jumping 1 minute into the future. According to Einie, he just traveled. He just traveled. So, anyway, Doc shows Marty the controls of the DeLorean, and one specific date comes to mind. November 5th, 1955. And this is the exact date where Doc came up with the idea of the flux capacitor, which makes time travel possible, which is a very complicated but awesome. But it's the battery, but it's the battery that makes time travel possible in the DeLorean. So here's the gist of it, how he came up with it. One day, one one day he was setting up a clock in the in his bathroom. He slipped and fell, and he hit his head in the bathroom. In the bathroom, and when he woke up, he had a mental picture of what was to be the flux capacitor. Now, why do I say November 5th? November 5th, 1955. And I'm getting to that. So back into present time, meaning Hill Valley 1985, which is the present year in the movie in Back to the Future. So as so here's the gist of it. So here's the whole plan. Doc is going to travel in time into the future, but as soon as Marty is recording it, Doc Brown's final goodbye before he gets into the DeLorean, the rebel group of Libyans get into the mall parking lot and start chasing Doc Brown, and they eventually catch up to him, and they just shoot him. Marty says, "No, you. If you have seen the movie, just like I have, you know what Marty says." Now, Marty has has on his person a protection suit, a nuclear protective suit. So in all the chaos, Marty gets into the DeLorean, and he runs and he tries to get away from the living rebels, but he accidentally hits 80 miles per hour, and he travels back to 1955, where he encounters his younger mom and dad. Now, regarding Marty's mom and dad, back in 1985, his mom Lorraine, and Dad George are good, but they're just going with the flow of 1985, meaning they're content with their lives. They're content with their lives. Obviously, Marty's mom, Lorraine, is content with her life, but back in 1955, she had dreams. And she had a boyfriend before she met George 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 McFly. Now that boyfriend is named Biff. Now Biff is your typical bully, but not your typical bully in the sense of a normal classic bully. Now Biff is the ultimate hunk, according to himself, and he wants he wants Lorraine all to himself, all to himself. Not only as his girlfriend, but to do the to do the to do the 19 the he Biff wanted Lorraine not only to himself as his girlfriend, but he wanted to do with Lorraine by force, which is very disgusting and very disgusting. The 1955 Cha Cha, if you know what I mean. The 1955 romantic Cha Cha, if you know what I mean, guys. But here's the kicker. Here's the kicker. Back in 1955, George was a nerd. George was just like me, a big science fiction nerd. And he was also a peeping Tom. Now, if you don't know what a peeping Tom is, you guys can Google it, but you guys can Google what's a peeping Tom. If you know what I'm talking about, guys, if you have seen the movie, you know what a peeping Tom is. But anyway, okay, I'm gonna give you a funny description of what a peeping Tom is. A love crazy romantic person, meaning in this case George McFly, who loves to stare at Lorraine by her window, up on a tree or something other than a tree. That's the best way. That's the funny description that I can give you what a peeping Tom is. But anyway, according to Miss McFly, Lorraine, back in 1955, Hill Valley 1955, George was according what George would tell her later, he was bird watching, but in reality George was peeping on Lorraine. But anyway, George lost his balance and he fell to the street, and Lorraine's father, meaning Marty's grandfather and future brother-in-law to George, hit him with his car, and George fell. George got a major fell unconscious and didn't wake up for a couple of days, and Lorraine was taking care of him as a nurse, like a nurse would take care of a patient. And as soon as George woke up from being knocked out for several days, they basically, it was love at first sight, and they went to the enchantment under the sea. They went to the under 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 the sea enchantment dance, where they first Lorraine and George had their first had their first romantic evening with each other. And as for Biff, we don't know. So back to the current Marty's current pickle. So Marty accidentally travels to 1955, but he doesn't know that. And by the way, in 1955, Marty's address and street is not built yet. So when he gets to 1955, so when Marty travels to 1955 with DeLorean, he crashes 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 on a farm. And since in 1955 since in 1955 there's no mention of time machines that have a DeLorean look. The farmer shoots Marty, tries to shoot Marty, and plus Marty still has his nuclear protective suit on. So the farmer and his family think that Marty comes from outer space. Anyway, Marty is able to escape the farmer, and goes to where he thinks he will find his house. But again, his neighborhood it doesn't exist in 1955. So he goes to the local malt shop or cafe where he he's trying to, and he has the idea to locate Doc Brown in 1955. So again, Marty goes to this local cafe where he sees Mary Goldie Wilson. Now, Mary Goldie Wilson in 1985 is running for mayor. But in 1955, Goldie is working at this cafe. And Marty says to Goldie, "Hey, you, Goldie, you're going to be mayor someday." And this is where in 1955 Goldie gets the idea that I'm going to move up in the world and become mayor. But then Marty bumps into his young dad, meaning George, and he follows George, who's on his bike, and then Marty sees his dad peeping on Lorraine, peeping on his mother. But instead of his grandfather hitting his dad with his car, Marty gets in the way of the reaccountment of the actual thing that his mom told him and his sister and his brother. So Marty gets run over by his grandfather, and then Lorraine heals Marty up, heals her own son up, and she falls in love with him. Yes, yes. And by the way, Lorraine looks pretty. She is cute. She is cute in 1955. And since Marty doesn't exist in 1955, and since Marty has Calvin Klein underwear on, Lorraine calls him Calvin. Lorraine, his own mother calls Marty Calvin. And again, according to the original story, according to Lorraine's 1985 Lorraine story, original story is that George lost his balance and fell to the street, and then her father, meaning Marty's grandfather, hit George with his car, ran him over, and then Lorraine nursed George back to health, and then they fell in love. But in 1950, since Marty saved his dad from getting run over by his grandfather's car, he got ran over by his grandfather's car instead, and now his mother is deeply smitten with him. And again in 1955, there's no such thing as reruns. So in 1955, the most popular comedy show in 1955 is The Honeymooners. And in 1955, where at Lorraine's house, Lorraine introduces Marty to his grandmother, Mrs. Lorraine. Mrs. Lorraine, or his grandmother, and then Marty gets introduced to his young uncle, and young aunt, and little baby Uncle Joey. Now Uncle Joey is he is in jail in 1985. In 1985. Now, in 1955, little baby Uncle Joey is in his crib, and whenever Marty's grandma tries to take little baby Joey out of his crib, he cries. So they decided to leave baby Joey in his crib. But anyway, Marty says that I have seen this episode of The Honeymooners, and his uncle says, what's a rerun? And obviously Marty says, well, a rerun is something that you'll find out in in the future, hopefully, And then Marty says, then Marty says, I have seen this on my TV. And then Marty's uncle says, 2 TVs? You must be rich. And then of course, back to Lorraine. Then Marty Marty's grandma says to Marty, don't I don't you look familiar. Don't do I know your mother? Do I know your mom? And Marty says, I think you might. Then Lorraine to to then Lorraine says to her mom, meaning Marty's grandmother and grandfather, can Marty can Marty can stay in my room. Marty can stay in my room. Marty can stay in my or Calvin, sorry, Calvin can stay in my room. Calvin can stay in my room, and then Lorraine squeezes the holy heck out of in a flirting way, the holy heck out of Marty's leg, and Marty's like jumps up out of uncomfortableness, which is pretty funny, and he tells his grandfather about about a certain address, meaning Doc Brown's address of his house. And then Marty then as soon as Marty's grandfather tells him where to go, Marty figures the address out, but figures the address out in 1985 street terms, John F. Kennedy Drive. But then Marty's grandfather says, Marty's grandfather says, who in the world is John F. Kennedy? Then Marty says, I'll be going now. And all we see is basically Lorraine having this look of drooling over her own son. Now fast forward a little bit, guys. Marty goes to the address, Doc Brown's house. And as soon as Marty knocks on the door, we see Doc with a mind reading machine on his head, and he hooks up Marty with a sticky circle, or a sticky circle. And then Marty says, Doc, I came here to 1955 in a time machine that you built. And then Doc says, No. Doc says, no. He's not saying no to that. No to that, but he's saying not a word. Then Marty pulls the sticky circle out of his the sticky circle and all the stuff that Doc hooked him up to, and he says, Doc, I'm from the future. I came here to I came here in a time machine that you built. Then then Marty then then Marty says, I I come I came here from the year 1985. Then Marty then Marty says then Marty shows Doc his his wallet. His wallet. His wallet and says and says that and says that my hair or my look is not the same as 1984, but it's me. Then 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 Marty says Ronald Reagan is the president is the president is the president is the president or something like that or something like that. Then Doc says the actor the actor. And of course, guys, if you do, fun U.S. history fact that connects with Back to the Future Part 1, Ronald Reagan, before becoming our president, he was an actor. He was an actor. He was a heart throb of an actor, but he was a good actor. He was an awesome actor. Anyway, then out of pure fright and just pure fright, and who can blame him? Who can blame Doc for doing this? He runs away from Marty. He runs away from Marty to his garage, and then Doc says, "Let me guess." In good old 1985, besides Ronald Reagan being your president, Judy Garland is the Secretary of State, and Cary Grant is the vice president. And of course Marty says no, like he doesn't say no, it's true. It is true. Marty doesn't say no, I'm telling you the truth, but without saying a word, without saying the words. And then Marty catches up to Doc, and Doc has his garage door garage door closed, meaning the door to the garage, not the garage door, but the door that leads to the garage, the door that leads to the garage, the door that leads to the inside of the garage. And then Marty says, Doc, I know how you got your bump in the head. You told me the story. You were hanging up a clock in your bathroom. You lost your balance. You slipped and you hit your head. You hit your head, and you had a mental picture of the flux capacitor, which makes time travel possible. Then Doc says, had the look of whoa in his eyes. He has a funny look of funny shock look, which is pretty funny. And then Marty takes Doc to see the DeLorean, which Marty had to hide very a very good hiding place. And then Marty shines the light of his flashlight to the flux capacitor, and then 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 uh then then Doc says, we need we need we need to take you we need to get you back home. Now how can Marty go back to 1985 and reach 98 miles per hour 98 miles per hour again. And again, he doesn't have plutonium at his disposal, but he has a newspaper. And here's why November 5th, 1955 is so important to this awesome movie. Because in 1985, there's a fundraiser going on to keep the clock tower from getting removed. The Hill Valley Clock Tower, which in 1955, which is exactly the year that Marty is stuck in currently, to be more specific, on November 5th, 1955, a thunderstorm hit Hill Valley with such power and such force that a lightning bolt hit the clock tower, the clock tower that the clock got stuck in the time when it got struck by the lightning. And thankfully Marty kept the pamphlet that has the story of the clock tower and the date of the thunderstorm. And Marty says, we do not. Then before Marty gives Doc the pamphlet, Doc tells Marty, can you show me your video that you recorded? And again, Marty says, and again, in 1955, there's no cameras, or there's no video cameras. So naturally, Doc is shocked and surprised that he still looks good in the future in 1985. But what he doesn't know, and what Marty knows, is that on the night in question in 1985, Doc gets shot by the living rebels. But there's one key word that Doc says in that video. 1.1 gigawatts. Now, a gigawatt, according to the Back to the Future dictionary is a big power source of energy. And since Doc is shocked by the number of by the 1.1 gigawatts, he talks to a picture of Thomas Edison, and then Doc says the only way that we can get a 1.1 gigawatt in 1955 is by a bolt of lightning. And this is where Marty says, "What did you say, Doc? Come again?" "A bolt of lightning." And then Marty says, "We do now. We do have a bolt of lightning." And this is where Marty shows or gives Doc the pen, the information pamphlet of 1985 regarding the clock tower. And exactly on November 5th, 1955, the clock tower gets hit by a bolt of lightning, and is stuck in the time that it got struck in at. But to be more specific, in 1955, November 5th is next Saturday night. So, in to be more specific, Marty traveled back in time on Monday on October 31st. On October 31st or on October 30th, 1955. On October 31st, 1955. Then after saying that, November 5th, 1955 is next Saturday night, then Doc says we will send you back to the future to Marty. But there's one key component for doing that. Besides the lightning and the clock tower. Doc asks Marty, did you bump into your parents? Have you bumped into anyone else but me? And Marty says, I might have bumped into my mom and dad. Then Doc says, show me that photo of you and your brother and your sister that you showed me from your wallet. And then Marty then Doc looks at the picture and he says, just like I was thinking. Your brother and sister are being erased from time. And if we don't get your mom and if we don't get your mom and dad together, you will be next. You will be erased from time. So then Marty goes to school goes to back to his current school, but in 1955, Hill Valley High School, where Marty shows or Marty shows Marty introduces Doc to his dad, but not like says this is my dad George, but Doc asks 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 Marty, who's your dad, and who and 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 Marty says the one that has the sign "Kick Me" on his back, and and basically and basically and basically Doc says, huh, what did what did your mom see in him? What did your mom see in your father? I don't know. Then Marty says, I don't know. Well. Then Marty retells what would have happened. What really happened. How his mom met his father, meaning George, but instead of his father, meaning George, getting hit by his father-in-law, meaning Marty's grandfather's car, Marty was hit by his grandfather's car, and then Marty Marty tells Doc again the second part where his mom took care of George, took care of his dad, and as soon as he woke up after several days of being knocked out, they fell in love. But in this case, Doc says to Marty, since you saved your father from getting ran over like a pizza by your grandfather, and you instead of him you got ran over by your grandfather. Your mother has romantic eyes for you instead of your father, like it should be. And then Marty says, Doc, that is heavy. That is heavy. That is heavy, and of course, Doc says, Marty, hey Marty, if there's something wrong with the gravitational pull in 1985, why are you saying heavy? So then Doc asked, well, you know your mom and dad. You know your mom and dad. How did they meet? Besides your dad getting run over by your grandfather? Well, they went to the an enchantment under the sea dance. And yes, and so then Doc says to Marty, stick to your father like a Twilight fan is obsessed with Edward Cullen, with Edward Cullen, but not as crazy. Just stick to him like glue, normal glue. Don't stick to him like an obsessive glue, but stick to him like you were obsessed with him, but not for real. not for real, and tried to convince them and tried to convince their father that that he should take that he should take that he should take that he should take your mother to the enchantment under the sea dance. So Marty does that. But again, George doesn't have the confidence doesn't have the confidence doesn't have the confidence to ask Lorraine out. And he's also a nerd. And another thing, there's one problem. Biff. And obviously, and another big problem is that Marty interjected himself by accident into the picture, into 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 a love triangle with his father and his mother, and of course Biff. So in a so so in a in a in a so in a desperate funny last idea to try to convince his father that Lorraine, that his mother wants to go with 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 him, meaning George, to the enchantment under the sea dance, under the sea dance. Marty disguises himself a as Darth Vader, not Darth Vader from Star Wars, but Darth Vader from the Pelagic Vulcan, and says to and wakes George in the middle of the night and tells him, if you don't take Lorraine to the dance, I'm coming back to make grilled cheese, or going to make grilled cheese out of your brain. Then the next day, Marty's waiting for George, because George told him the whole story, the whole Darth Vader thing, and basically says, says, meet me at the cafe, and Marty does that, and George gets the chocolate courage out of chocolate milk and approaches Lorraine at her booth with her friends and tries his best to say the words, would you like to go out with me? Would you like to go out with me and to the dance, to the enchantment under the sea dance? And Lorraine says, that's so sweet of you. That's so sweet of you. But even before that, Biff had warned George that he didn't want to see George back in the cafe ever again. But this was before before George bumped into his own son. So anyway, Biff and his crew of dummies, went into the cafe, and Biff saw George in the cafe, close to talking to Lorraine, and as soon as Biff saw George talking to Lorraine, he was mad. He was filled with hot sauce. but thankfully before approaching George at a hyper mad speed, Marty tripped Marty Marty poked his leg out and tripped George and tripped Biff, and 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 Marty was like Marty. Then Biff got up and Marty saw Marty saw how tall Biff was. Then 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 he then Marty was running away from Biff and his and his and his and his and his dopey friends but then Marty then Marty got or borrowed a skateboard, which in 1955 was a brand new thing, and Marty, using the skateboard, was able to outrun Biff and his goons. And as for Biff and his goons, they were they were they were they were they were tricked, or they were again they were outsmarted by Marty, and Biff's shiny car crashed into a truck full of manure, and ever since, and then a few days later, approximately on Wednesday, on November 2nd, 1955, Marty came up with the idea that yes, he would go to the dance with Lorraine and pose as as his as his mother's date, and would do something to upset her, that would do something to upset his mom, that meanwhile would do something to his mom that would make her upset. And who would save the day? George. George would hit Marty, knock him out, and then Lorraine would have my hero eyes, and then happily ever after. First dance and first kiss, and Marty doesn't disappear from time. But in typical nerd George McFly George McFly fashion, George doesn't is running late according to the planned time of the planet. And but as Marty is parking with his mom, Marty sees his mom drinking, sees Lorraine drinking, and Marty says, "Lorraine, don't you know that drinking is bad for you, and you smoke too? And don't you know that smoke is bad for you as well?" And then Lorraine says, "You're sounding like my mother." Then Lorraine is cheeking, and she gets to kiss Marty, and and Marty and then Lorraine says, that's strange. When I kiss you, I feel like I'm kissing my brother, and and Marty says, no, no, that is not weird. But then a hand a hand reaches for Marty, thinking that it's actually George's George George's hand. Marty's like, okay, the plan is going very well, but as soon as Marty realizes that it's Biff reaching Biff took him out of the car. Uh, Lorraine says, let Calvin go. Then then as then 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 Biff sees how pretty and something something under something underneath underneath uh underneath Lorraine's dress. If you guys have seen the movie like I have, you know what I mean. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. But then Biff gets into Lorraine's into Marty's grandfather's car, and here he comes to George. Here he comes to George. But again, George is running late, so he doesn't know what happened. Uh, so for in George's defense, he's thinking that the person inside the car with Lorraine is 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 Marty. So when George opens the door and says his tough guy line, George sees that the guy that is inside the car with Lorraine is Biff, not Marty at all. And then Biff says to George, why don't you run along now? Make like a tree and leave. Make like a tree and leave. But George says, no, Biff, not this time. Leave Lorraine alone. Then in a tough guy, bad guy move, Biff basically tries to twist and rip George's arm off, but as George is screaming in pain and agony, he sees Lorraine's face of help me. George gets his fist tight and punches Biff straight in the face. Then like the original story, the original reaccountment of how they met, how Lorraine met George, how Lorraine and George fell in love, comes into fruition, almost. But I'm getting to that. Lorraine is looking at George with crushing, with like first crush, with falling in love eyes. Then they walk into the dance. But then Marty escapes the from the from the music band's car, because Biff's henchmen or dopey friends put him there. But thankfully, but thankfully, but thankfully Marty, but thankfully Marty was able to tell uh, the the band the members of the band that the key that their car keys to open the back of the car are are inside with me. So the band so the band members get a crowbar to try to open the van, but one of them Chuck uh, one of the members of the band cuts cuts his hand open and cuts his hand open and he can't play guitar, and then Marty says you need to play the guitar because that's how my mom and dad first fall in love with the song and with your song that you play, and they kiss, and if they kiss I exist I I come true. And then and then 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 the other band members say tell Marty if you know someone that can play the guitar. And thankfully Marty does. Thankfully, luckily Marty has experience with the guitar, and he sings Johnny Be Good. But Johnny Be Good again is Johnny Be Good, and Chuck Berry hasn't sung or has no idea that Johnny Be Good would become a hit because Johnny Be Good as a song doesn't exist yet. But as soon as but as soon as Marty is done playing Johnny Be Good and singing as well, Johnny Be Good, a dumb dope tries to cut in cut in cut cuts 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 nine cuts George off from Lorraine, and Lorraine is saying George no, George no George like says no George no, but then George comes to Lorraine's aid and hits this other dope in the face and as this is happening the band is playing Earth Angel, but this is critical. As the band is singing Earth Angel and playing Earth Angel, Marty's disappearing from time and space and from from existing. But as soon as his father knocks this other dope and just hits him and just punches him, and then George has the romantic courage to kiss Lorraine, and this is where Marty wakes up and gets up with a like yes energy. I'm not going to disappear like like the MCU did after Mr. Purple Baldiness Thanos disappeared the MCU. Then after 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 the dance after the dance, Marty said goodbye to his mom and said goodbye to his mom and dad, and said to his mom, if if someday you have a kid named Marty and he's 5 years old and he burns the living room up, go easy, don't be hard on him. And then Lorraine says, then Lorraine says, then Lorraine gets the idea of Marty. What a nice name. Meanwhile, as Marty is is going is on his way to meet up with Doc. Doc is freaking out because Marty is running late. Is running late, and and Doc is afraid that Marty is going to miss the 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 lightning bolt that will take him home. That will take him home. But thankfully, Marty makes it just in time. But before he makes it just in time, Marty writes a letter to Doc, warning him that on the night that he goes back, he gets shot by the living rebels, by the living rebels. But Doc says to Marty, I don't want any. If I know anything about the future, it will ruin the timeline, the future timeline. I will get to the letter or the contents of the letter in the future. Then Marty gets into the DeLorean, but the cable that attaches to the clock tower, and that attaches to the flux capacitor, and that attaches to the light to the traffic lights gets stuck on a tree branch. So poor Doc Brown has to climb the clock tower and has to hook or attach the cable to the clock tower. But thankfully, as soon as Doc reattaches or rehooks the cable to the clock tower, the lightning strike hits the clock tower just in time as Doc is propelling down from the clock tower, and he was able to plug in the cables that would make the 1.1 gigawatts to take Marty back home to 1985, and that's exactly what happens. So now back to 1985. back to 1985, exactly 30 15 minutes before the living before the living rebel group get to the mall. Marty Marty runs as fast as he can to the mall, where he sees himself, his 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 past self, 1985 traveling self, getting into the DeLorean and traveling to 1955. And then Marty sees Doc unconscious and basically knocked out, probably dead. But no, Marty, but no, but when Marty starts saying no, Doc, no, you're supposed to be alive. But then Doc wakes up. Doc is alive, and he's alive because he got a bulletproof vest, because he had read the letter that Marty wrote to him back in 1955, warning him that he would get shot, warning him that he would get shot on the night that he got back, which is right now, currently. On the night that he would get back. So basically, what I'm trying to say, guys, is that Doc broke his rule. He broke the Space-Town. He broke the timeline by jumping forward by himself, but before meeting Marty in the current year, meaning 1985. So with that being said, guys, this is how this wonderful part one of the Back to the Future trilogy. And so with that being said, guys, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button, and please, if you want to stay up to date with my videos about Back to the Future and my other content, please don't doubt yourself and hit that notification and tap that notification bell. And if you want to expand your time here, don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to tap that like button, and if you don't mind, as well, do hit that and tap that subscribe button, and until we see you guys for see you guys back to the future, back into the future again. Bye.